All right, guys, how you doing? It's Monday, so that means another episode of the Fantasy Football Review Show after a packed weekend of Premier League action. So coming up on the show, I'm going to be looking at 5 standout performances from this weekend and how they got on DraftKings and also conversely on Fantasy Premier League. And then after that, I'm going to look at 4 or 5 players who are incredibly disappointing when you considered how much they were owned and how much people thought how well they were going to do. So kicking things off at Stamford Bridge, well, actually the King Power Stadium, where Chelsea were resuming their chase for the title against the defending champions Leicester City, and Marcus Alonso scored had the game of his life. I think the game of his probably even maybe the game of his career. He scored 2 goals in that game up at the King Power Stadium and ended up with 33.75 points, only 7.3% owned, and he was in all of the top 10 lineups in that striker contest where the ownership was 7.3%. Great game from the Spaniard. He was up against a Leicester side who have looked completely out of sorts at the back. They're in some real trouble in terms of going down to the bottom of the league, and Alonso really took advantage of that, as you can see from his stats there. So even better than that was Harry Kane of Tottenham, who managed a gargantuan 53.25 points for Spurs. He's so integral to their team. If they want to have any kind of challenge for the top 1 spot this season, I don't think they can get that. But if they want to challenge for the title this season, Harry Kane has to stay fit. It's as simple as that. The impressive thing about him, though, is that his 53.25 points, if you think that a 36 points is what you get from a hat-trick, he had a lot more than just the goal points. He actually had 11 shots on the day, 7 of those on goal, and you can only imagine if he'd been playing for the whole season, he'd have way more than those 13 goals that he's got so far. And if I was a Spurs fan, I'd be looking at their team and thinking, sack off the Europa League. We're definitely getting a Champions League spot from the league, and we should also go for the league itself as well. So going on from there, Tom Heaton of Burnley, who I don't think we're really surprised when he has these big performances now, especially on home soil. Another man of the match performance for the Englishman, where he had 5 saves and he obviously got the win and the clean sheet points. So 20 points in total. Burnley are now actually 3rd in the league for home form, which is absolutely incredible. And it just shows that Sean Dyche is going to keep them up with that home form. He's not going to need the away form. Everyone says, oh, they never win away from home. They're not going to need to because they're so good on home soil. He made a couple of absolutely excellent saves, one in particular towards the end when it looked like Southampton might get back into the game. He kept them in it. He saved Burnley's bacon. Another player who looks like he could save the bacon of one of the teams down the bottom is Abel Hernandez, who was owned by a tiny 1.4% of teams in the striker, but he actually ended up with 29.5 points on the day. He's under that new manager Marco Silva there, and they both it feels like, I mean, I'm not going to say it's like a new signing, Abel Hernandez, but it does feel a little bit like that. He was injured up until sort of the beginning of November. Now he's back in the team, 29.5 points on Saturday, as I mentioned. He had 2 goals, and the delivery from Hull, from the wings, is absolutely excellent. You've got Andrew Robertson at fullback. When El Mohammadi's back from the African Cup of Nations, they'll have him as well. And of course, you've got Robert Snodgrass there too. He actually scored 21 goals last season, Abel Hernandez, which was the first time he's played and started over 30 games in a season. So it's quite clear that if you play him for enough games, he will score the goals. And I think Hull have been playing a lot better than their results suggest recently. And you get Abel Hernandez in your team, I think you're going to be very, very happy with things. So the final standout performer was Michail Antonio of West Ham, who was very low owned, only 12.6% owned in the big contest of the day, the EPL striker on DraftKings. But he had an assist on all 3 goals for West Ham against a very poor Palace team, who did actually take quite a long time to get to break down, because West Ham didn't actually score their goals until all 3 of their goals in the final 20 to 25 minutes of the game. But the hope with Antonio, of course, is that he fills that void left by Dimitri Payet when he actually leaves. I think he can, because the thing with West Ham is they've got Andy Carroll in the middle there, who's always going to be a threat from balls into the centre. I don't want to say he's not just a big man. As you can see from the goal he scored on Saturday, he's just as good with his feet as he is with his head. But you've always got that threat with Carroll, and especially against teams that can't defend well against height, which Palace are one of them, it's always going to be a threat. You had 3 assists there from Antonio for 25 fantasy points. And if you're looking for someone who's good, because he is quite expensive on DraftKings usually, he's in that sort of in that upper third of players in terms of cost, so you are going to have to pay up for him. But West Ham, they can score goals. They showed last season they can score goals, and the team hasn't really changed that much. You just have to think whether you can trust Antonio, and more importantly, if you can trust Andy Carroll to stay fit. If you can, then I'd always go for Antonio, because when they've got a good run of games, especially on home soil where they seem to be picking up a few more results against the lesser teams, I think you can trust him. So as I said from the top of the programme, there was quite a few disappointments this weekend on DraftKings. I've picked out 4 of these in particular who people will have been very disappointed at. Top of the bill for these is Eden Hazard, who was 28.7% owned in the striker contest, but actually only managed 5.5 points. The thing with Hazard is I look at his numbers and he doesn't really get that many points unless he scores or gets assists. When he does that, he tends to get a lot of them, and he'll get sort of between 20 and 30 points. But you look at him usually, his 5.5 points, he actually, on Fantasy Premier League, they credited him with an assist in this game. I think he had it as well on DraftKings, but the assist is worth 6 points, so he got less than the assist is worth, and that just says it all for me. Especially if Diego Costa isn't in the team, he won't get as many assists, but maybe he'll get more goals, because there'll be a bit more of an onus on other players getting goals. As you can see with Alonso, their goals can spread around the team. Going to another team from Hazard, going all the way down to the bottom of the league, Patrick Van Aanholt, who was 22.4% owned. I think the thing with Sunderland in this game, and he only scored 2 points, the thing with Sunderland in this game, I think everyone thought they were going to win, because Sunderland's form at home was actually looking quite good. Stoke came in there, they were 3-0 up after about half an hour, and Van Aanholt, only 2 points. Huge ownership, and he's one to write off. Another one, Gylfi Sigurdsson, a favourite of anyone that plays on DraftKings or even on Fantasy Premier League. He only scored 8 points on the day, and he was 13.7% owned, so not huge, but disappointing when you picked him. And he will have had a few crosses there, but it just shows he doesn't get a goal or an assist. He's maybe not the strongest player to have in a game like that against Arsenal, but it's still good to pick when they're playing against a team that are going to be a bit more obliging at the back. Finally, Andre Gray, 12.8% owned. He got 0 points. So yeah, Andre, better off picking Joey Barton, who may end up starting some games now. He actually, a few papers had him with an 8 out of 10, Joey Barton, even though he only played about 20 minutes. So he's definitely one to watch. But yeah, those 4 very disappointing performances from those 4, who are all players that I would pick, especially Gylfi Sigurdsson, Eden Hazard and Patrick Van Aanholt. They're players that I'd consider on a weekly basis, because they do have good consistent performance, and that's why obviously the ownership was so high. So that's been it for the Fantasy Football Review show for this week. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up below. If you want to see more fantasy football content, subscribe to this channel where you'll find content for Fantasy Premier League and DraftKings contests as well. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.